It's my absolute pleasure to be here this afternoon. My name is Dave Karger. I am the host of a show called Frontrunners, which airs on Fandango and Access Hollywood. And we are very lucky to have 5 members of the cast and crew of The Imitation Game here with us today. So let me first introduce the director of the film, Morten Tyldum.
Thank you.
And from the cast, please welcome Alex Lawther. Next up, we have Matthew Beard. As you all know, this cast was nominated for the SAG Award this year for Best Ensemble, while this next gentleman also was nominated for Best Ensemble for Downton Abbey, Alan Leech. And finally, please welcome a 3-time SAG Award nominee this year, Benedict Cumberbatch. I asked the audience if this was their first time seeing it, and almost every person said yes, which was really interesting. One question that is often asked when I do a Screen Actors Guild Q&A has to do with rehearsal. And I think a lot of actors are fascinated by how much of a rehearsal process people are able to have, or whether it's such a tight schedule that you can't. What was the situation with you all? This was not a film that cost a ton of money. Did you have some time to get together before you shot?
I mean, I can start. Yeah, I insisted on rehearsal. I mean, to me, that's crucial, especially on a movie like this, which is so character-driven. So we had close to 3 weeks of rehearsal, because we shot the movie in only 8 weeks. Yeah, so we really had to, and also it's important to me. Rehearsals is not just where you find out what you're going to do, but you'll find out what you're not going to do. It's the time when you can make mistakes, where you can play around, when you can create that atmosphere, that space where you should be allowed to make a fool of yourself, to try out things, to experiment, and it also bonded us. We became sort of like this family, which is also very important because this group became very tight in the end. So to me, it was crucial to have that time together with me and the actors.
And was any of that pre-time in any of the locations, or were you just in a rehearsal space?
We were in a rehearsal space, but we tried to brought things which were important for the scenes. Like we had, a real Enigma machine brought in from the Nazis, from that time, a real one which we used, and we had things like that we used during rehearsals.
Someone in the audience named Chloe stole my question, which was going to be my next question. So Chloe, I'm giving you credit for it. She's very intrigued by Alex and Benedict playing the same character, which is so gorgeous and so seamless in the film. Alex, you did such a tremendous job. How much, if at all, were you guys able to talk to each other? How much were you able to see any of the footage that the other one had shot to help you along?
We had opportunity in the rehearsal time to sort of meet and chat. I didn't watch any rushes of Benedict's whilst we were filming. I didn't see any of that. But yeah, there was an opportunity to sort of formulate and share our ideas about this man, which was lovely for me to have Benedict's generosity of and patience, and be able to talk with someone like Benedict about
It's very
ideas
nice for
about
me too.
someone like Alan.
And were you talking more about the minutia of the character to make sure the stammer was consistent, or was it more overall overarching ideas?
Well, I think the remarkable thing about what Alex did is that while he observed a little bit of rehearsal, and I chatted about certain directions I was going, and he did his own work, and we kind of came to a similar point by chance and the taste of investigation, and Morten guiding us, I'm sure, on our separate sort of time levels or zones or whatever you want to determine the divide as being, and. But credit to him. That's his authorship. It's not an impersonation, and the subtleties that flow between the two characterizations, I think, are as much to do with the work he put in as an actor. I mean, Alex he's the discovery of this film. I think it's a sublime performance, and to show that man in his blossoming adolescence reach that point of just having something to trust and love taken away from him. Not only the tragedy of that, but to see how that then diminishes the character, how something that's opening then starts to close again, made my job very, very easy. You know who he is by watching that performance.
So many secrets in this movie, so many people with secrets. Alan, I feel like your character might have, the most surprising one. And now that I've seen the movie a couple times, I'm really studying you to see if there's anything that you're giving away. When you're playing someone who is a spy, is a double agent, does have a secret, do you try to play it, or do you try not to play it?
It's a very good question, and it's one that I think anytime you play a character like this, you wrestle with, because as an actor, part of you wants to show it. But obviously for the audience then, it's like showing a magic trick. You kind of ruin it. And you ruin the surprise at the end. So I certainly play the very best of spies are people that you would never even question. And that's why Graham's script was fantastic, because you really trust Karen Cross. And you see that relationship develop between himself and Turing, and you invest in him, and it makes the reveal all the more shocking, I suppose, in the end. So yeah, I didn't really play any. I didn't do any twirling mustache, or say any words in a Russian accent.
We stamped that out of him in rehearsals.
Yeah, I rocked in going, "Hello, Turing." The Enigma machine. So thanks for stopping me to do that, guys. Thank you.
And Matthew, I feel like you have one of the most difficult moments of any actor in the film, where you realize that Carlisle boat has your brother, your family on it. There's so many different ways that one could play a moment like that. I mean, how did you and Morten, I guess, arrive at, because it is in a very interesting, subdued way at first. It's kind of a slow burn once you realize what's happening. You don't immediately start losing it. It's kind of a fascinating response. How did you get at that?
Well, that was actually one of the scenes we spent a while rehearsing, because obviously there's quite a lot of characters in that scene and there's a lot of things going on. And whilst the scene is about my brother, I think it serves a very clear narrative purpose of showing how Alan's reaction to that kind of emotional weight is so different to the rest of us, to the rest of the characters. But so in rehearsals, and Morten was fantastic at, it's one of those ones you don't want to do too many times, because it can become very stagey and learnt. So I was kind of put myself in the hands of Morten and Benedict, and it's a very long scene, so I think we're doing it for a day and a half, so it's quite a long time to be losing your brother. But yeah, I mean, for me, like, I don't know, that was in the original script, and I kind of saw exactly how I wanted that to unfurl. So it's just one of those instinctual things, I think. But I think the reason, as you say, like, it's a slow burner, is actually a weird thing that did happen, was that we shot that really late in the film, and we'd all become so close, and the rehearsal period, as Morten said, bonded us, that actually maybe the more obvious sort of aggressive, like how could you possibly do this kind of path of it, did kind of become more this sort of that his friends were betraying him, and that upset. And that was actually something which wasn't actually apparent until we shot it on the last day, because they were now my friends. And when I looked at them and I said their names, you know, begging them, it meant something different to how I originally read it. Yeah.
Was that a particularly challenging scene, Morten, for you to feel like you could get?
Very challenging, because it's so much going on in that scene. As you said, you go from probably the most, you know, heroic moment when they cracked Enigma, you know, a minute before, and then, you know, it's all about the realization that all their work now, you know, now the real work starts. You know, they have to keep all this a secret, and the realization, and in many ways, yes, it's in many ways Peter's scene because he lost the brother, but in many ways it's all about Alan understanding that he has to take all of this up on his shoulder, the responsibility, you know, another layer of secrets that he has to carry, and him taking that up on himself, and sort of like, because it's a, you know, it's a journey about somebody who's an outsider and then becomes part of a group, and this is, you know, the first step of him having to sort of like push them away to take that responsibility.
Here's a question I like from the audience, Catherine Robbins. Hi, Catherine, wherever you may be. Hi. Catherine says, this is for all of you. Did you have a relative that was in World War II? And if so, did that inspire you even more to do this project?
I did, yeah. My grandfather was a submarine commander. I didn't meet either of my grandparents. My other grandfather was a desert rat in the desert. And, I can't remember. Well, he was all over the desert, I suppose. So that's why I'm being vague about it. I can't remember quite where he was, and that's not a secret family history. I can't remember. But somebody told me that I did have a distant relative who had actually worked at Bletchley Park during the First World War. Wow. Which I didn't even know it was used for that purpose during the First World War. But anyway, it had worked in intelligence. But yeah, it wasn't particularly that. I mean, I think it's an era I've always been aware of because of my grandmothers and having that generational connection, and obviously being very proud of my grandfathers, even though I didn't get to meet them, unfortunately. It's the most fascinating, extraordinary period of history that touches all of our lives by degrees of separation of generations. So yeah, from that point of view, yes, but a specific drive to do this project, no, not particularly. But it's an extraordinary period to visit.
Anyone else?
No, I didn't. Not that I'm aware of, but I've never bothered to trace my family.
It's a good question. I'm sorry we don't all have sort of spies in the family. It's really disappointing. I think
but
he might.
But it is. I want to say it is a very. I mean, most of the film takes place in 39 and 40, which I've always been fascinated by that part of the Second World War, because when you look about Second World War, because the Allied forces won. But, you know, in 39, 40 was really dark years. They thought they were losing. I mean, the German, you know, war machinery seems unstoppable, and especially Britain was this far from breaking. They were starved up. They were being bombed to pieces every night, and I always admired the way they sort of like kept going, and the way the dignity and the sort of like sense of strength in trying to preserve some sort of like normal everyday living. I always admired that, and that was really important for me to try and get into the film. So and that's why we came up with the idea with having the crossword as sort of like representing sort of like everyday living, and show that crossword solving in sort of like the most brutal and horrible circumstances possible. When you know you try and seek refuges during the night, and when you come up, you don't know if your house is still standing. By the way, the crossword you see is one made by Alan Turing. Is the crossword he used when they recruited for MI6 during the time. So all of that is true.
Wow. Is it impossible? Like, if we were to see it, would it even is it very kind of timely, or does it have a timeless quality to it? The clues, and is it something that we could actually try to do?
I think a lot of people tried it, but I think nobody was able to do it.
Well, none of us are able to do it.
We did one crossword as a group from the Guardian newspaper, and it took us 5 days.
And that was the quick crossword. That's the one where you have something like fast. I don't know, speedy, pacey. It was the easy one. It's a cryptic crossword, so it's very possible. It's not dependent on period, the knowledge base to crack it. You just have to be smarter than us.
I want to ask about the scene where you do finally crack it, because it's such a phenomenal scene because it's truly exciting, and yet there's no car chases, there's no spaceships. You're obviously helped along by the beautiful score by Alexandre Desplat, but so much of it is because of what you all did together as an ensemble. How many different kind of pitches did you do it at to feel like you were getting it right? And how did you amp yourself up for it too?
We ran a lot. I mean, we were running from a pub to the hut, so that helped. There was a lot of breathlessness, which came naturally for some not athletic, but in my case, in Anna's case, very athletic crossword enthusiasts in the middle of southeast England solving a puzzle that cracked the code. I mean, seriously, it's an extraordinary thing. I think this is a drama about men and a woman, but there were other women in other huts and other parts of the operation there. But a woman in our drama, Joan Clark, extraordinary woman, who were sitting in rooms and solving problems. That's the drama. I mean, you pitch that into a Hollywood studio, it doesn't sound that exciting, There are some guys and one girl, and they're very smart. Some of them are mathematicians. Some of them are chess champions. And they're going to sit in a room, and they're going to solve puzzles, and a really big, important one. And they're not going to leave the rooms much. And when they do, they'll run between one room and another to solve it. So there's your action movie.
You're actually selling me on it. I have to say, you could sell it.
Yeah.
I think that genuinely in the rehearsal period, when we were looking at that scene, the pressure these people were under on a daily basis, every time that bell went and they failed, they knew that they were costing lives. So I think when we all came to do that scene, that's where that tension came from. This was actually an opportunity to end this war.
And even when I watch it now, but when we were doing it as well, there's a palpable sense of the hairs on the back of your neck when that machine stops for the first time. That sort of frozen moment in time, you empathise very easily with what that must have been like for, as Alan says, people who had failed again and again every day at midnight, every day. It must have been extraordinary.
In a lot of the group scenes, there are these great moments of camaraderie. There's even some humor with we were going to get some sandwiches and all that. And then every time we flash back to poor young Alan, it's just one heartbreaking experience after another. Alex, did it ever bum you out at the end of a shooting day after you had, been nailed in underneath the floorboards, and then your best friend, you found out he had passed? I mean, did it take a toll on you?
My first day, sort of on set shooting was the being nailed into the coffin under the floor. So that was sort of my welcome to the set. But no, really. It is a tragic story, and the emotions are all sort of very present in the script in Graham Moore's writing. But then you could say cut, and then you have Jack Bannon playing Christopher Morcom, who was lovely and remains a friend and a neighbour of mine back in London, and Morten and a team of lovely people. So. Yeah, you are dealing with something full of emotion, but you're surrounded by really nice people, so it makes it easier. Yeah.
I also think that some of the scenes, I always looked at some of the scenes as some of the most romantic in the scene. Actually, I don't think it's all upon that. It's this sweet. I mean, it was so. I'm so grateful that what Jack and Alex did with those scenes, and it's because it's as Benedict said, that unfulfilled love that happened between Alan and Christopher sort of like is what in many ways shaped him and built up. and it's so important. And we know this because Alan sent letters to Christopher's mom his whole life. And his obsession about recreating a consciousness, recreating an intelligence, is that possible? That triggered his whole ideas about the computer, which is mind-blowing to think about. And by the way, the school you saw is the actual school Alan Turing went to. There was a memorial place there for Christopher Morten. So it was very emotional for all of us to be there and watch that and do it. And it is all true stories. He was buried underground in a box in real life, and Christopher buried him up. They were doing construction in the school. So that's what happened.
It's also my understanding, I don't know if the audience knows this, but your production designer, or maybe, I don't know if it was that person's decision or your decision, that all of the wiring on the machine would be red to kind of be like veins and give the machine a more human quality. How did that idea come about?
I mean, Christopher is more, I mean, it means more, it's a machine, but it's more than a machine. It's his own character, and to Alan, it symbolizes so much. So that's why we came up with the idea with having all this red cabling, the blood veins, and also open it up more. It's more like an organic being, and how it sounds. And I mean, it's the machine. It's a character in itself in the film. So Maria Dukovic, production designer, who did a brilliant job on this. The machine is actually based on the real machine. So I mean, it's a great design. All the colorful dials and the size of it, all of that is real. This is how it looked. So it is an amazing machine.
Here's a question from the audience from Grace Waring. Where are you, Grace? Hi, I see you back there. Grace says to Benedict, is there any video of the real Alan Turing? And if so, did you use it to help create the voice and the mannerisms?
No, there's no video or audio recording of him. It's
That's surprising.
Is it? I don't
I
know.
mean,
Well, no, I'm not. The thing is, he was not. He was not even within his own field where he could have triumphed. He could have written a paper, especially on his earlier work on computable numbers. The idea of where a universal machine, which then got called the Turing machine, now a computer, came from. He could have worked on that, and also algorithm and work that he'd been doing, and he could have cornered the market of that area of science and become a Nobel Prize winner. I mean, but he didn't pursue one thing in that sense. He never was interested in that kind of self-promotion or celebrity. He moved on to the next problem. And then obviously all the complications of his life meant, I guess, that obviously a lot of his work and his time was spent away from any kind of public knowledge of who he was and what he'd achieved, as the film, tragically points out. But there is none. I suppose it's not surprising in the sense that he was never, what I'm saying is he was never a spokesperson for his work. He never got to that level of being one of the go-to voices, or he just carried on working, So yeah, it was off written anecdote of what he was like, and a couple of people I was lucky enough to meet, his nieces, both of whom were young girls, but told me a very sort of revealing anecdote about what he was like, that he made them feel as if they were adults in his presence. They weren't treated as children. They were treated as equals, and they felt relaxed and confident. They noticed his stammer, but they weren't inhibited by it. They didn't feel awkward around him. And he used to entertain them with stories and make them laugh and play games with them and show off and do things like play chess with his back turned to the board and still manage to beat them, And that gave me a huge insight into the humanity of the guy and what was arrested in his development, where he felt he could communicate with the innocence of children. He could treat them as the best things about children, the innocence, the idea of something that's uncorrupted and healthy, and something that he'd had taken from it every single step of his life. So I found that sort of profoundly moving and revealing about who he was and what his nature was. And a colleague as well, who I asked about what effect the chemical castration had had on his body or his psyche and mentality in Manchester. And he said, well, no, Alan was very private, and I didn't notice him putting any weight on or much change in his mood, because he was very good at keeping himself to himself. But he was affable, he was really polite and charming, and made you feel very included, and would engage with you, both with his eyes and his conversation, and draw you into his world. But you knew there was a cut-off, and we didn't feel any stigma or prejudice was attached to him after we all knew what would happen with the court case. But he did tell me this once. He said one day that a doctor had given him who'd been giving him the weekly estrogen injections, said, this is getting a bit embarrassing for both of us. Why don't I put a slow release device in your leg? And it will release based on your metabolism, rather like some cancer treatments do for prostate cancer. And it did, and Alan said, but so it'll stop us from having these weekly injections, these weekly meetings, but will it stop after 2 years? Oh yes, absolutely. And he was telling this anecdote to this colleague. He said, and it's still dosing me, and it's a good few months after that 2 years is up. Not really cricket, is it? And walked away, and that sort of wry, self-deprecating humour, you know, that came from the same man that in a dark night of the soul strolled into a kitchen, opened a kitchen drawer, pulled out a kitchen knife and gouged his leg open to try and remove that device. And it taught me about the fact that he could be humorous about himself as well as you see in the film being humorful by accident, by being the sort of the fool in a situation. But he was very aware of his own predicament, not isolated at all. And the limp I gave him in the last scenes is an acknowledgement of what he did to his Olympic level marathon running body.
It's even more heartbreaking to think of the private turmoil when you then learn that he was able to put kind of a good public face on it, or as much as he could.
It's a British trait, but it seemed to be a peculiarly, accentuated one with this extraordinary man. So yeah.
Okay, here's a question for you, Alan, from the audience. I have a feeling this is going to be hard to answer, but I'm going to ask anyway. This is from Melissa Morgan Squire. Do you prefer working on Downton Abbey or doing films, and why?
Well, I like working, which is good. Downton has given me a huge amount of great opportunities, so I'm very grateful to that show and what it's done for me. And I love doing other projects. I mean, the opportunity of being part of this movie, I remember when I read the script, I was so bowled over emotionally and kind of felt an immense kind of duty once I got cast to try and tell this incredible story of this amazing man. So I love doing that, and I love the show. So I just like working.
A couple last things before these guys have to go. This is a question from Andrea Covell, which I hope I pronounced that right, Andrea. Okay, good. Hi. Andrea wants to know, Benedict, do you have any desire to be a director? And if so, what would you want to direct? Stage, Shakespeare, romantic comedy, music video, question mark.
Adverts? No adverts, maybe? Yeah. No, I would like to direct, definitely. I don't know what yet, though. But I'll take some of those suggestions down. I'll think about it.
And then to end up, I want... Oh, go ahead.
No, that's all right.
Okay. I want to go down the line. I want to start with you, Morten. Not counting people in this room, who gives your favorite performance in this movie? I'm going to start. I'll start. I love Mark Strong as the MI6 guy. I thought he was incredible.
That's really impossible for me to say. I mean, I really feel blessed having to work with this group of actors. Seriously, it was a small movie, small love budget movie, and to have all of these phenomenal actors all say yes to be part of this was great. And it became this tight-knit family. Everybody was so prepared and worked so hard. And one thing I mentioned a lot of times was really impressed me is how hard everybody worked off camera to make the other actors look good. It was, but there were people were crying and acting and performing off camera just to make everybody wanted everybody else to be good, which was, I think it was sort of like everybody wanted to do right on Alan Turing. Everybody wanted to get this right. We had a responsibility to tell this story the right way. So it was truly unique. So it's really hard. I agree that Mark does something really phenomenal with those small moments. Yes, nobody can raise his eyebrow and do nothing the way Mark can do it.
Good.
And it's good. So I love that. But there's so many good things. There's so many small. I can't even remember his name. He came in to play the headmaster. And because I lost the original actor who could do it like just a few days before. So he just somebody who did a taping off, and I saw it and came in, and no rehearsal, met Alex for the first time, and just killed it in that scene. And so there's so many small performances, so many good things in this. I'm just very thankful and feel very blessed to be working with all these phenomenal actors.
You know, it's an absolute joy, and I wish there were more of us here to sort of relish in it. We had this moment last night, a sort of surreal moment in Palm Springs, and it's a fantastic cast to be a part of. Every time I see the film, there's so much depth in everybody's contribution to it. Each of the characters deserves their own film, let alone the level of performance and work done on each character. And it's a joy to be part of this cast. It really is. And we had, I think, our biggest gathering possibly in New York. Was it New York? I think with Charles Dance came out as well, who's sublime in the film, and Kira was with us, and Mark. And I don't know, every time we get this sort of school group photograph together, the gang back together, it's a wonderful feeling, as it was on the day. It really was.
I love it.
If I should mention one, I think Tuppence who came in and played Helen. That
She
little
was
scene.
amazing.
I think that's if I should say somebody who just came in for a day and did something, I think that Tuppence playing Helen in that scene did something remarkable.
Well, I can't congratulate you enough, and I also want to thank you all, Benedict, Alan, Matthew, Alex, Morten, for being here, and thank you all
Thank you very
for
much.
your questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.